Hello, my name's Rob Epstein and I'm a product manager in the Microsoft 365 product marketing team responsible for end user computing. Today I want to talk to you about how we need to think about re-strategizing our end user compute in order to modernize it to deal with the challenges we've seen of the last couple of years. The needs of our users have changed and expanded, and many of us are still working with old technologies. So let's start diving into how we can modernize to deliver excellent end user computing for every one of our users. So let's start by having a look at some of the trends we've seen in the end user compute space over the last couple of years. Clearly, as everybody shifted to remote working, the cloud is now everywhere. And with that move to the cloud comes a massive increase in the cybersecurity threats, both of the software, the devices, and the networks that those devices are connected to as well. So in order to try and stay ahead of that, we're seeing much more frequent updates required for all of those software and the hardware itself. And clearly from a user perspective, we've seen a massive shift in the overall workplace as well, with people now starting to work in some kind of flexible or hybrid environment. And with that, we've also started to see a change in the devices that people use and of their individual user requirements. So as we think about hybrid work in particular has affected our users and the impact that that can have on our need to transform endpoint strategy itself. So with flexibility or hybrid now being the default, we've seen this shift in users' habits, the shift to BYOD, to new profiles and types of users, and we'll drill into that in a little bit more detail shortly. We've seen a change in devices and the importance of keeping those devices and their networks secure. But critically, the PC is the new workplace. It's how people do their work. And so we've got to figure out how we deploy machines and we maintain and secure those machines, often that we'll never actually physically touch, so an entirely remote way. And then the users themselves are starting to change. We're seeing with the Great Resignation a massive battle for global talent. So we need to adapt and think about how our device strategy, how our end user experience all up can help us attract and retain that best talent. As many people have left the workforce, we now need to start re-recruiting. And we're doing that in, again, a much geographically diverse environment because people are now able literally to work from anywhere. So as we start to think about the PC as the new workplace, we really must start to deliver excellent end user experiences for every one of our users, no matter what their work style and their work habits are. We need to make that PC a truly amazing place that people will feel happy to come back to every day to do their work. That experience needs to be productive, collaborative, secure, reliable, and of course critically personal to the individual. Because our users are changing too. We're starting to see more and more users that are now being digitized in order to communicate and manage their workflows. We've also seen in a recent study that Microsoft's done in the UK of 3,000 end users and 1,000 IT decision makers that we've seen a massive shift in how and where people work. One size really doesn't fit all. Lots of users are now coming back to the office, many are continuing entirely from home, and many are doing some kind of hybrid environment. And even within these broad three types of users, we're seeing varieties as well. So our traditional knowledge worker, with Gen Z entering the workforce, we're starting to see them being cloud first. Even on a traditional laptop or PC environment, they expect to do all their work through a browser. Our frontline workers, are adapting to different types of devices, many using entirely mobile first experiences, but some needing occasional interaction with traditional PCs in a very simple environment, and some still needing that the high performance and an entirely versatile PC experience. And more we're starting to see a shift to temporary workers, not just the traditional interns or apprenticeships who may be with the organisation for a short period, but with the Great Resignation and people needing to bring in new types of workers into the workplace, we're seeing more contract workforces as well. And many of those contract employees are actually working entirely offshore and out of the geographical environment the organisation is based in. So we need to think how we can deploy all of the devices that those people need in order to give them access to the line of business applications that they need and do that in a secure environment within the corporate infrastructure. And the technology has started to adapt, of course, to provide these capabilities. So we're seeing these shifts from a technology perspective towards multiple devices, including mobile and bring your own devices more. We're starting to see the move to the cloud and SaaS services, and starting to therefore, how do we use that technology to automate and be proactive in providing improvements to the way that the systems, the devices and the networks run. From a security point of view, we're shifting from very much a corporate network and a firewall perspective to people connecting anywhere via the internet, and therefore the need to move to a sort of zero trust, internet first, identity based perimeter. And then, as we've talked about, the employees themselves are starting to change. We're starting to see the rise of much more automation, of working with partners, with contractors, as well as our customers, and needing to do this from all sorts of locations. So in summary, organisations really need to adapt their IT and transform the way they think about their end user solution in order to provide an amazing experience to users. You need to start to develop new practices that are role specific to that individual user's requirement. And from an IT perspective, how do we deal with all that complexity? Firstly, we have to go cloud first, and then we also got to figure out how we continue to manage the complexities and the threats of the rise in cyber challenges. So from Microsoft's perspective, what do we think is that vision of perfection in end user compute of the future? Well, it absolutely has to be able to adapt to all of the things we've just talked about in the modern world, and it's got to be flexible as users' needs change and the individual users who make up our organisation change around us as well. We really must focus on delivering that fantastic user experience to each and every employee. And we have to think about how we do this with empowering IT, how we can reduce the burden on already stretched IT departments who are having to deal with greater levels of digital transformation, and therefore get them away from doing the menial tasks of just managing and updating machines and devices, whatever type they may be. And how do we continue to ensure that all of that can be done in a very current, secure and compliant way so we can keep all of that infrastructure, devices and applications up to date. So as we start to think about delivering that great user experience, we need to think about ensuring that we're delivering a really productive experience for each and every individual user. And that means taking advantage of the latest capabilities of our cloud-first Microsoft 365 enterprise applications. This isn't just about the move to Teams that will help people collaborate and communicate wherever they are, using video, using chat, using files, but it's really starting to ensure that people are able to work synchronously and asynchronously. They're able to edit documents at the same time, that we're improving their ability to get things done quicker simply by providing AI capabilities within Office. For example, in PowerPoint, where PowerPoint Designer can help automate the creation of beautiful looking slides, or automate the analysis done within Excel or Power BI of complex data sets. How do we make this a really natural experience for users if they want to write with handwriting, if they want to work with their voice and dictate everything? The AI capabilities are now there thanks to the power of the cloud and injected into the tools that people use every day, as long as we ensure that we deploy that latest technology and we teach our users how to take advantage of it. And they want to be doing that wherever they're working, whatever device, including mobile. And then from an IT perspective, how do we empower IT? And most of this is a journey through all of these elements of moving to modern IT. So at the bottom of this slide here is traditionally the way things were done for the last decades almost. We were imaging devices onto the networks. We had very traditional non-touch devices. We were using help desks to support users. We were using Active Directory as the typical identity. And we're starting to see most companies on some form of transition towards the top here, which is a cloud-first environment. And how do we provide that entire stack to deliver a great user experience that can be managed and deployed from anywhere? So how do we use technologies like Autopilot with Intune to deploy machines remotely? How do we use the telemetry on the network and in the devices already to provide analytics and understanding for our IT teams of exactly how things are working, to improve them proactively and deliver great user experiences and keep things up to date? So all of this requires us to move from things like Active Directory and ADFS towards AAD and cloud-first environments. And there are paths to transition that at whatever pace is right for the organisation. And then finally, from a security perspective, we need to move towards this idea of zero trust. Now, hopefully many of you are already on this journey, but the principles of zero trust is that each and every interaction needs to be verified explicitly. Whether that be access to resources, data, user logins, we need to be able to do that and trust it each and every time. In all situations, we should be delivering the least privilege access required from any user, and that's including our administrators, where we elevate as needed and then return to the least privilege access. And of course, we have to assume at some point we're going to be breached, and so we need to understand what's going on in the network in order to be able to respond to that and deal with it as quickly as possible. So if we are able to deliver these great end user experiences, to empower IT and to do that from a zero trust, secure perspective, what's the impact of that? What do we believe this vision of end user computing North Star can deliver in the way of benefits to the organisation? Well, there's some statistics that you can see on this slide that's come from the result of us doing research with customers who have moved to the Microsoft Managed Desktop. And that's a managed service where Microsoft engineers take over managing many of the features of the end user compute and delivers what we believe to be that clear, crisp Microsoft 365 environment that delivers that North Star vision of end user compute. And actually our users in these estates start to see reductions in boot time. They see reductions in crashes. They see improvements in battery life. So they have a better experience. IT see reductions in help desk calls and the amount of time that devices are usable and uptime. And of course, what therefore the business starts to notice is massive increases, not just in productivity, in employee engagement, but actually in sentiment as well. NPS scores increase, people are much happier with the overall environment, which remember is how they now do their work. So, we've talked about what we believe the vision can be and why it's important. Let's have a look at how we now actually go about it. And that's using the 5 principles of modern end user compute that will hopefully allow us to deliver that North Star vision. And we're going to spend a little bit of time now breaking down these the 5 elements, these 5 principles. So we'll look at devices that are individual to the user and meet their specific job requirements. We'll look at the operating systems that enable that platform, and then how we manage all of that from a deployment and how we can use that same management platform to provide great endpoint security. Because ultimately, when we've got all of that, what we're trying to do here is deliver those great collaborative apps, the Microsoft 365 enterprise applications and Teams, in order to allow our users to collaborate, to work from anywhere, to work in that combination of asynchronous and synchronous, no matter where they're working from. Now, we have a lot of solutions left to right across that stack in order to pull this vision together. And sometimes it can be quite difficult to build your strategy without understanding how all the parts work together. So we built this map around modernising end-user compute. And as I said, we're going to start to take each of it in turn and break down those 5 principles. So what you can see on this basic map here is everything on the left is the endpoint itself. It's the actual thing that a user will use day to day to do their work. And everything on the right is modern management. And the objective ultimately is to get out of that top slice of legacy, which is typically how things have been done for several decades, and into the blue box you can see here of modern management. So let's start breaking this down, and we'll start with devices. Now, this can be either Microsoft Surface devices or great modern devices from our OEM partners as well, that will deliver a variety of flexible form factors, be they small and light, tablet or 2-in-1 devices, through to high-performance workstations, all of which can be deployed via zero touch using the management tools available. And this allows users to work naturally, take advantage of the latest in chip-to-cloud security to ensure that device is always secure and that the identity is always secure. And once they're up and running, they can log in with their biometrics, with their face, with their fingerprint, and then when they're working, they can do pen if they need to, they can use voice for dictation, they can really take advantage of not just the performance of the latest processors and the security of the latest hardware, but that innovative set of features that we're seeing in modern thin devices as well. Now, as we start to see different types of users, for example, remote workers more, or people working in different geographies, then it may become necessary to deploy devices that are virtual rather than physically shipping things around. In this situation, we can advise our users, particularly our temporary workers, to say, look, just grab any device that you can literally be any platform, could be a phone, a tablet, or any operating system platform. And from there, we can deploy cloud-based technologies. And here we can stream desktops. We have a couple of offerings here. There's the Microsoft Azure Virtual Desktop, which allows a lot of flexibility in the way that we deploy those devices through the cloud. It allows us to share desktops. It allows us to stream individual applications if we need. And more recently, we've introduced Windows 365. And really think of this as your cloud PC. It's an always-on, dedicated and personalized PC that contains the operating system, the applications, the data, the storage and the compute in the cloud, that each individual user can be deployed, streamed to any particular device, but it's always there for them no matter when they log off and log back on from a different device. Where they are is where they pick up, and that device is available to all the time. Now, this allows us to massively speed up our deployment and also to decrease the resources as we no longer need them, and it can be accessed from anywhere on the planet with an internet connection. Now, the key thing as we look back through the last couple of years of COVID and of lockdowns, actually in research that I've referenced we did recently, 66% of employees are still using the same device that they were at the beginning of the pandemic. And that means they're now starting to find that those are out of date, the batteries don't last long enough, they're not getting that best user experience that we talked about. So hopefully we can think about how we arm those users with those great modern devices, those wonderful variety of Surface devices, or their virtual devices as well that we can rapidly deploy from the cloud. Then we need to think about the operating system that we run on it. Now we know that most organizations have now already transitioned to Windows 10, and hopefully they're starting to keep those up to date with feature updates as well to ensure that not only are they secure, but they're taking advantage of the latest features. Last October we released Windows 11, and just recently we've provided updates on the commercial future for Windows 11, and we believe Windows 11 is really the operating system for hybrid. That's very much how it's been designed. So it's an evolution on Windows 10, but it provides a great fresh user experience that's familiar enough for users to jump straight into, but allows them to get quicker to the data, to the applications and the things that they need to do. And it has a lot more built-in AI capabilities that allow them to find the things they need and to use things like voice dictation or even to do voice captioning, taking advantage of all of that AI that's now built into the operating system. We've done an awful lot to work on security as well, with features like app compatibility, with things like App Assure that ensure that we know that applications and processes we're checking through AI and the telemetry that we have on the Microsoft Cloud Network, that they are indeed secure and able to run. The beauty of being able to make the transition to Windows 11 is that it is built on Windows 10. And therefore the update will feel more like a traditional feature update than maybe a historical complete operating system upgrade. So it should be quicker, lower cost, and much easier from an IT department, particularly if you're using the modern tools that we'll come on to from a management perspective to do that. And that will allow you to deliver these great user experiences to ensure that it's the most secure version of Windows with a great deal of new security features. But all of these, whether the users are running Windows 10 or Windows 11, can be managed by the same management tools. So the Microsoft Endpoint Manager capability. And actually, that can also manage other forms of devices and operating systems like Apple or Android that they might be using as well. But as we start to think about what operating system users have, we really need to ensure, as part of this modern management principle, that we're using a modern servicing model as well. So long gone are the days of 3 to 5 year refreshes where we'd flatten all the machines, deploy a new gold image, and that would be the standard, lockdown for as long as we could until we did another great lift and shift. We need to move to a frequent, regular servicing model, frankly, that users are now expecting and anticipated because it's what we see on our mobile devices and have done for years. So how do we facilitate that in a Windows environment? And again, this applies whether you're talking physical devices or virtual devices. And the key here is to use the information in the network itself and to use automation. So Windows provides a huge amount of telemetry back to the network to help you understand what's going on within your network and within your systems and within the compatibility of your software. It's able to perform analytics on all that data to give you insight as to what you have on your network and how compatible it is, either as you move from feature versions of Windows 10 or to make the move to Windows 11 as well. And so as and when you're ready to make those moves, you can then use the automation built into the management tools that will simplify delivering all those updates, whether they be the security updates or the more feature updates or even the update itself to Windows 11. Now, we've recently announced a great new feature for Windows Enterprise called Windows Auto Patch. And this is a managed service where Microsoft and our engineers will take on the responsibility of delivering much of that servicing model for you and keeping both Windows itself, the Edge browser, and the Microsoft 365 Enterprise applications up to date for you. You're still in control of exactly how that operates and when those updates are delivered. But we're able to guide you in terms of creating rings from an inner test ring to a slow, wider test ring and then ultimately rapid deployment, and monitoring through the telemetry exactly how that's responding as it's deployed out into your estate, halting it where there are issues, rolling back if needed, and then enabling you to pick up when we've helped remediate those problems. And that's some of the benefits of moving to Auto Patch. Now, Auto Patch is included if you have a Windows Enterprise license. There's no additional charge. You just need to enroll those machines as long as they're managed by Intune and on a compatible version of Windows. So all of this automation and telemetry is the way we need to think about moving to a more modern management approach, that Windows servicing, in order to help keep all of these devices, physical or virtual, up to date. So now let's start to look at that management itself and how we're going to manage all of these physical, virtual and mobile devices as well. And really this is the heart of the whole system, and that's Microsoft Endpoint Manager. Now, Endpoint Manager, or MEM, is the bringing together of the legacy solution Config Manager, or SCCM, that I'm sure many of your organizations have been using for years, and Intune, which is our MDM solution capable of managing mobile devices, but very much now first party for managing Windows devices as well. So with bringing these solutions together into a single license and also a single pane of glass for you to manage, you can really now manage all of your devices. You can deploy them, keep them up to date using all that Windows servicing model and all that automation. But it's also the basis for how you'll deliver security and identity and deliver your applications as well. So ultimately, this is about selecting your journey and going on the correct journey to the cloud. Now, if you're heavily invested in Config Manager as well, we would suggest you simply start by cloud enabling those Config Manager devices into some form of co-management, and that allows you to transition workloads over to Cloud First and Intune as and when you're ready. But all of this, as I said, is the basis for delivering that servicing model for Windows, and at the same time enables capabilities like Autopilot, which allows a totally zero trust deployment where you can have your device manufacturers or your device suppliers ship direct to your users no matter where in the country or the world they are. They get the benefits of that wonderful unboxing, box-fresh environment, and as soon as they connect to the network, it asks them to authenticate using whatever authentication you have on your system, and then it will start deploying your environment out to that machine across the network, including deploying applications, enrolling it into management, so that you know you've got a standard corporate environment without ever having to touch that. And that speeds up the time that you can get new employees onboarded or deliver them new machines, as well as massively reducing the cost and the complexity for your own IT department. And then, as I've said, this MEM is the tool now that's going to start building our integrated endpoint management as well. So we can manage the policies, we can manage the identities, we can manage multi-factor authentication, passwordless login and single sign-on, all through this single simple tool. And we're starting to see, as Intune is growing in its usage, that our partners are taking advantage of the extensibility as well. So you can even now start managing a lot more of everything from firmware and BIOS updates through to drivers, no matter who your OEM partner is, to deliver that great experience all from a simple tool. Coming soon, we'll be enhancing this with some premium endpoint management tools, the first of which we've recently announced as Remote Help, to ensure that all within the same system, your IT staff can now remote manage employees and deliver them the help they need no matter where they're working. So let's move on to security. And here we're starting to talk about taking an identity-first security model based around Azure Active Directory. We need to start shifting from AD and ADFS towards that cloud-first AAD, which will deliver significant improvements in security itself. We also need to ensure that our hardware provides us a trusted platform and a trusted device, so that we can be sure from the moment that machine boots that the hardware, the firmware, the operating system, and then obviously the user environment as well is all secure. So that chip-to-cloud security. We want to be able to then deploy Defender through the same management tool to get to this zero trust environment. And Defender will add a whole raft of capabilities depending on exactly which license that you have, that gives us that next-gen protection, not just in anti-malware and antivirus, but really starting to look at how processes are running. And recently we've announced some enhanced phishing protection as well, built into Windows 11 in Defender Smart Screen, that will again help to ensure that we're looking after the identities, and that even if people are phishing, even within applications that we deploy through Teams or onto the machines, it's checking where that identity is being validated and warning users if there's anything untoward. So we're using the same tools to deploy that identity-driven security and to get to that zero trust environment, particularly with things like multi-factor authentication and Defender for endpoints. And then finally, of course, that means the collaborative apps, which is how work gets done. Now, we're going to use the same tools, the Endpoint Manager tools, to start deploying those once we've packaged our apps in a modern way, whether that be the company portal or the store. We're able to enable customers to download the apps that they need, that you have verified and licensed and made available to them. And we can use that tool to deploy applications across all platforms as well, whether that be mobile and web. We have a whole variety now within the Microsoft 365 environment. Now, most people these days are starting to get their work done through Teams, really as the way that work gets done. Not just in collaboration, but our files are stored within it, and our ability to work and co-author on those data and files with our colleagues within those the individual teams that they're working within and the projects that they're working on. So hopefully we can really simplify the overall way that apps are distributed, that they're updated and maintained, that we have simple single sign-on so that the users have that wonderful user experience as they log on from application or to cloud applications, and in the background without too much imposing on the user, they're getting the great user experience whilst you're keeping your environment secure. So summarising, let's look back at the 5 principles of end-user compute and how the solution of Microsoft 365 all brings this together. So if you look back, we've talked about the physical devices and the virtual devices, which is how our users get their work done. Be that great Surface devices or the virtual devices with things like Windows 365, allowing us to deploy cloud-based PCs, and any of those running a combination of Windows 10 and Windows 11. And we do see that transition will take time and expect most organisations to have in their estate at the same time. But remember what I've said, that we are offering 99.7% compatibility on applications, that you're using exactly the same tools to deploy and manage Windows 11 and Windows 10. So the question I might pose is there any reason not to start moving to Windows 11 sooner? And certainly to go back now and think about the pilots that you might want to run ready to start deploying that into your estate. So those are the endpoints. And then the real trick here is, how do we get into this blue box? How do we start to modernise our approach to management? Everything from the tool that we're using being cloud first, to the identity being cloud first, and that enabling a greater level of security and simplification in the way that our apps are deployed. And then taking advantage of that servicing model, the tools that are built in, the telemetry, the analytics and the automation to reduce the requirements on our IT team and make it much easier for them to manage. Now, everything in the blue box is really what Microsoft is going to help you enable and then support and manage ongoing when we deploy the Microsoft Managed Desktop, or MMD. So as I say, this is a new managed service from Microsoft where you can work directly with Microsoft engineers, the engineers that built Windows, in order to help maintain that environment and deliver that excellence in end-user compute vision that we talked about right at the start. So when you think about what we've been through as we've delved deeper into the 5 principles of end-user computing, really Microsoft 365 is the one solution that delivers everything you need. So obviously when you start with a device, within the M365 license, you have the operating system in Windows 10 and Windows 11, you have the management environment in Microsoft Endpoint Manager, the security in Windows Defender and Microsoft Defender, and then the collaborative applications in Office 365 and Teams as well. So Microsoft 365 delivers you all of the capabilities you need for the platform that we've just talked about, and all of those elements of excellence in end-user compute we talked about. And one thing of all of that is Microsoft has really become a leader in so many of these technologies within the M365 platform here. You can see that Microsoft's now a leader in 5 Gartner Magic Quadrants, including the critical ones that we've discussed so far today, including endpoint protection platforms and unified endpoint management tools, as well as access management. So you're really getting the best product in the market, leaders in their field, in order to help you deliver all of these tools and technologies and deliver that end user experience. And of course, we also believe that this can help deliver great business value and savings within the environment as well, irrespective of what size organisation you are. Here, there's some basic data from a Forrester Total Economic Impact study that we did a couple of years back that starts to look at how you can make savings, frankly, just in the simplicity of licensing, because you consolidate behind your single Microsoft 365 license. You can also take significant cost from the IT department in the amount of work that they have to do to manage and deploy and secure all of that estate, which frankly allows you to free up resources for the significant levels of digitization and frankly the higher value requirements of that the IT team are now having to deal with. And then, of course, by improving security, you take advantage of a reduction in cost of risk. There's also the ability to work from anywhere now and to do all of this remotely, so we see some basic T&E savings. And then the automation will allow us to actually improve the overall performance and speed in which our processes and take cost out of all of that. So there really are significant cost savings to moving to this modern way of managing on the latest hardware, be it physical or virtual. And finally, it's worth saying that Microsoft's here to help as well. We have a huge level of tools to help you deploy, understand the compatibility, most of which, remember, you're probably licensed for already within that Microsoft 365 license. We also have our fast track services, so if you have the right level of licensing, you can engage directly with Microsoft engineers or Microsoft partners to help deploy all of this technology. We're so confident in this, on the app compatibility of Windows 10 and Windows 11 that we actually provide the desktop App Assure service. So if needed, if you have an application, including your own line of business applications, that no longer run as you transition operating systems, you can engage with the App Assure team and they will actually help resolve that problem for you, if needed, going all the way back to the operating system and fixing bugs within there. And then lastly, the Deployment Center will help you build a plan to deploy this and to move to this vision of modern management on modern devices. So coming right back to the start, if we think about those different types of users, with information workers, our increasingly digitized frontline staff, or the increases that we see in those temporary workers as well, they all require, as we said, one size doesn't fit all. They need the right device and the right platform and the right environment for each individual out there. And yet, as the PC is the new workplace, we've got to deliver that excellent end user experience. And you can see whatever combination of operating system and environment that individual needs, Microsoft 365 provides you the platform and the single license to really deliver everything on top of the devices that you're purchasing. So as we wrap up, it's time to start thinking about where you go from here. I recognise that we've covered quite a lot of technologies and solutions today, and that each organisation is going to be at a different stage of its journey towards modern. So the next steps that we would advise is to go and evaluate the devices you have, understand whether they're delivering the right experience for each of your individual users and how well they'll last you into the future, and when is the right time to upgrade and ensure compatibility with Windows 11, which is likely to be your future operating system. And as you look at the operating system itself, consider, again, the ability to upgrade those and to start doing your pilots today. Because as I said, we know it's compatible, it's managed in the same way. And then talking of management, how are you going to build that journey to modern cloud-first management with MEM, Endpoint Manager, very much at the heart of it? That's really going to unlock all of these capabilities, the security capabilities. It should be the tool with which you ultimately do your move to Windows 11, because Windows 11, as I said, should just be an update using the same tools that you should already be using to manage in the cloud your Windows 10 estate. When we get there, that really provides the basis for zero trust security. So if you haven't already, start embracing zero trust, engage with the Microsoft security team so that they can ensure that you have a plan, because zero trust and security is obviously a massive area that we haven't really had time to touch on today. Nonetheless, that shift to cloud identity and MEM management is the basis for zero trust and that journey to a much more secure environment. And it's quite likely that most of your organisations already have collaborative apps like Teams in place. We've seen a huge growth of that as the move to remote work in the last couple of years. So as I said, we've covered an awful lot of technologies. And the important thing to remember is that for many organisations in the UK, we know you're already licensed through Microsoft 365 E3 or E5 for most of the technologies that we've covered today. And yet many organisations are struggling with the complexity of lots of third-party applications, lots of different tools in order to try and manage that. So really, as I leave you today, I would suggest engaging with your Microsoft account team or with Microsoft partners who can go back over everything we've covered and help build an individual journey for you to start delivering that excellence in end-user compute and that North Star vision that we talked about in order to help each and every one of your individual workers get the most out of hybrid working. Thank you.